And now we're going to have the first presentation thanks to Thijs Xhaflaire, who is our consulting engineer for security in EMEA, who's going to talk about how to keep compromised devices out of our environment. There will be live demo, so that was brave from Thijs. We all have the live demos, so so thank you again for coming. It's a pleasure to have you here, and stage is yours.
Switch over to this microphone. To check, people at home, can you hear me as well? I think they can. Yeah, I think they can. Well, hey everybody, nice to meet you all. Actually, this is my first visit in Poland, so thanks for having me, and thanks for Adrian and also Paul for inviting me to MacAdmins in Poland. We have these events as well in the Netherlands, in the UK, and it's also cool to see, well, these events becoming bigger and bigger here in Poland as well. So again, thanks for having me and giving me a time slot to speak around some cool workflows we can achieve together with Jamf and our security solutions. Before we kick it off, raise your hand if you are using Jamf Pro to manage Apple devices within your organization. Cool. Raise your hand if you use another MDM to manage Apple Enterprise. Absolutely fine. So most of the workflows I'm going to show are around using Jamf Pro as a delivery framework and our security solutions to basically feed information into either Microsoft conditional access or Google BeyondCorp. Now, our security solutions are also integrating with other MDMs or Apple Enterprise Management solutions as well, like Workspace ONE, Mobile Iron, and others alike. So see this as an inspirational session on how you can basically enhance your compliance policies. But again, yeah, indeed, I'm Thijs Xhaflaire, security consulting engineer at Jamf. I'm part of a wider group within Jamf's systems engineering department, where we have pre-sales engineers, and I'm basically a consulting engineer helping either the pre-sales engineers, but also building a lot of solutions around how to integrate Jamf Protect as an example within the Microsoft Sentinel stack. So today we are going to talk around how to keep compromised devices and vulnerable devices out using Jamf Pro, Jamf Protect, and device compliance from Microsoft or Google BeyondCorp. So everything what I'm going to show today is through the lens of Jamf and Microsoft, but identical workflows can be achieved using Jamf into Google BeyondCorp for context-aware policies. Raise your hand if you are using the Microsoft stack for maybe identity and access management. Google? Come on, there must be, okay, Okta? Okay, are there any other suspicious identity providers which I'm not mentioning right now to make sure if I can relay what I'm showing back, if that's also applicable to one of the IDPs being used here as well? Cool. Well, again, workflows are applicable for Google, Microsoft, but also Okta as well. So I think we will cover a broad use case here today. Before we continue, and I am not going to bore you today with too many slides, but I just want to cover a couple of slides to basically show the bigger picture and make sure you understand what we are going to do before actually going into a live demo. And I then ask you also all to pray for the demo gods if everything works out well today. So as some of you maybe know, recently we have been adding new functionality into Jamf Pro. A couple of years back, we only had within Jamf Pro conditional access for macOS specifically. But recently we have introduced macOS to device compliance in Jamf Pro, which we will cover today. Also for Google, which I already mentioned, we recently added iOS into Google BeyondCorp integration within Jamf Pro, which is a really unique integration, allowing you to potentially move mobile devices from Google Workspace into Jamf Pro to start managing those devices. Now, before we go actually into everything that's available as of today, I want to highlight the difference between Jamf conditional access for macOS, which is currently being deprecated, and the newer device compliance for macOS within Jamf Pro. So with conditional access for macOS, which I used already 5-6 years ago when I was a traditional system administrator at bol.com, which is a large online retail platform. We basically used this integration where, as an example, an end user uses the company portal app from Microsoft alongside Jamf Pro as primary MDM to register that device into the Microsoft stack. Now, once the end user basically successfully did register their devices, we were able to basically collect these attributes from the computer and relay that back into the Microsoft stack. And it's a more extensive list, but I have filtered it on which identifiers can we use within Microsoft to basically build our compliance policies on. As you can see, that's quite limited from a security perspective, that you can only basically mark a device as compliant or non-compliant if they do match up on one of these or multiple criteria. That's luckily why, well, Jamf has been working on device compliance, which is the more modern API from Microsoft to basically allow an MDM provider to be in control when a device is being marked as compliant. So forget about this, but this is where it started, and I will show you how we can basically use device compliance alongside the Jamf security solutions to basically make sure only the devices that we trust and that are secured are getting access to sensitive applications. Again, this is the old one, but let's move over to the new one, where basically within device compliance for macOS, Jamf is in charge to basically decide which device is going to be compliant. The registration process for an end user is identical. They need to rely on the Microsoft company portal app, or in case of Google, they need to register their Google Chrome browser using self-service into the Google stack. But basically what we are now able to do is allow Jamf Pro to evaluate and flag if a device is compliant, yes or no. And guess what? We can do that using smart groups. Many of you raised your hands like, yeah, I'm using Jamf Pro, so most of you are familiar with smart groups, and that basically results in that you can build incredible lists of criteria before we basically mark the device as compliant, yes or no. Any questions before I continue? Good question. So I must be cautious here because Jamf is working on integrations with Okta, which I cannot share in depth today. But this year you will, well, maybe some of you will attend Jamf Nation Live, which is one of the events also happening in Germany. So maybe that's the one that is most close to Poland, where we will announce really cool stuff on Jamf and Okta together, which could be related to this as well. So if you're working with Okta and Jamf, make sure to, well, watch the Jamf Spring Review and either Jamf Nation Live to basically get the latest news on that integration. Good question though. Let's briefly cover what we are using as of today with using those newer technologies. So the workflows I'm going to show are applicable for macOS endpoints and mobile endpoints, as long as they, of course, Apple. What we see here is Jamf Pro on top. Jamf Pro is feeding either Google or Microsoft with basically a device and its compliance state, compliant yes or non-compliant, as an example. But we are using the Jamf Protect macOS security portal and Jamf Security Cloud to basically feed Jamf Pro and its delivery framework with a lot of additional security-related criteria. So as an example, with Jamf Pro, as of today, with not using one of our security solutions, you can basically build your compliance group based on all the computer inventory data we have in Jamf Pro. File vault, firewall, and passcode as an example. As we all know, you can build your custom extension attributes, which allows you to basically build, well, there is no limit basically from a criteria perspective. Once we are adding, in this case, Jamf Protect, which is the endpoint security solution specifically built for Mac, into the mix, we are basically able to feed Jamf Pro with attributes or events, maybe when a device has been compromised by a behavioral-based attack, or when a known threat has been detected on one of those devices. So once that happens in real time, we are able to basically send a signal to Pro and use it also as additional criteria. The same applies for the Jamf Security Cloud, which is our acquisition we did last year, which called back then Wandera. So not sure if, well, some of you are already familiar with Wandera, but a year ago we did acquire them, and they were mainly focusing, of course, on mobile security. But since we acquired them, they are also focusing on, or we are also focusing more and more on network security on the macOS endpoints as an example. Where we can feed, again, Jamf Pro with activities of a device generating phishing or malware network traffic, or where we can generate events when the device is either running an out-of-date OS, which is not a problem at all. But more importantly, you can also send the same signal to Pro when a device, Mac or mobile, is running a vulnerable version of macOS or iOS, and that becomes more relevant to use that in one of your compliance policies. And of course, other attributes are available, cryptojacking and adware. So we have a huge extensive list, and I will cover some of them today. Now we have covered basically all of the slides. What I will show here is basically an end user experience using all these solutions together before we actually go into how do we configure this and how to basically lay down all the puzzle pieces to achieve these workflows. So I will talk you through the video, what's happening. This is a very clever guy, Thijs, working on a Mac, and Thijs is receiving an email from another guy called Thijs. He trusts his email, and Thijs is sharing an amazing app with the other Thijs, which tries them to download a sample app in this case, so it's nothing malicious, but it's just for demonstration purposes. And Thijs is going to execute the sample application. Basically, because there was a match in our Jamf Protect solution on either the signature or the hash, we are preventing the application from being executed. So based upon execution, we stopped it from being executed and we moved that application into the quarantine folder. Now, in the background, we basically gather all these attributes and inform Jamf Pro that this threat has been happening through the Jamf Protect and Jamf Pro integration. Now, what's going to happen in this video, and I did speed up a little bit to not bore you with a couple of minutes of waiting because there's some back-end delay. Thijs is going to reach out to the other Thijs to basically make him aware, hey, why did you send this malware sample to me as an example? But in the background, we are going to revoke all the user sessions from this particular user across the whole Microsoft stack. So within a couple of seconds, you will notice that this session in my browser, but it would also happen in the Outlook app or any app that has been connected to Sample Single Sign-On within the Microsoft stack, will be signed out automatically. Using this, we can prevent any further harm. And this is just a very basic and very basic example how we can use the Jamf Security Cloud and Microsoft or Okta or Google together to basically make sure we only allow employees accessing sensitive resources once we do trusted devices, and we are making sure that there are no active threats. As you see, I'm not able to log in because there's still pending threat on my device. So only once the IT or security admin basically archives this threat, we will remove those attributes from Jamf Pro, and we are getting compliant again, and we are able to access, in this case, Microsoft Teams. Very basic example, but we are able to do much more advanced workflows, but I thought let's start with a more simple one. Any questions? I'm not sure if people are using, well, security solutions and advanced workflows like these, but I think it can add really value to make sure that your security admins basically are happy with the fact that you are only allowing users to get access into sensitive apps once we do trust those devices. So again, there are a couple of elements being used here. Jamf Pro, Jamf Protect, and the Jamf Security Cloud. But you can also only use Jamf Protect and Jamf Pro or Jamf Security Cloud as an example. Okay. And again, let's time to go through all the puzzle pieces together and do a live demo. So we will see what happens, but I think I have faith in the technology today that a live demo will work out correctly. So what I'm going to do is change my display mode. And it should be go mirror. So what we are going to do is basically configure partially, because if we were going to configure everything, we might be here in maybe another 30 minutes. But what we are going to do is walk through the Jamf Security Cloud, Jamf Protect, and Jamf Pro, and let's build those compliance groups together. So I'm going to sign in because my sessions got signed out. I'm going to refresh Jamf Protect, and I might need to sign in back into Jamf Pro. Now we are getting our hands dirty. So, as I've mentioned before, we have a couple of integrations, Google and device compliance for macOS. So today we are going to talk around device compliance for macOS. Basically, you just need to set up the integration between Jamf and Microsoft just once. Once you have successfully connected between the Jamf Cloud and Microsoft, you will see the connection verification status is success, and you are able to basically decide which devices are allowed to enroll into the Microsoft stack by using self-service and the company portal app. And once that device has been enrolled into the Microsoft stack, which smart group within Jamf Pro are we going to use as compliance group? And I think I don't need to explain to all of you what is a smart group and how dynamically that calculates when a device gets updated or an attribute changes. But basically, within this view, we are able to decide when is a device going to be marked as compliant once they have enrolled into the Microsoft stack. So let's take as, yeah, sure, go ahead. Well, what you can do within Jamf Pro is group nesting. So as you may be aware of, within computer or mobile device smart groups, you are able to basically, if device is member of another group, so you can do group nesting within a smart group, which allows you in the end to build one group that maybe also reads other groups. And the question was, can we use multiple groups for compliance groups within Jamf Pro? To repeat that for the people at home. Now, if we look at a particular computer, which is the computer here on the ground, and I am going to, as an example, extension attributes, I will show you a couple of examples. So for this particular computer, which also applies for mobile devices, I have been creating a couple of additional extension attributes, as you see here, out-of-date OS, phishing detected, malware network traffic detected, and those extension attributes are going to be populated by either Jamf Protect or the Jamf Security Cloud with either the value true or empty, once one of these, well, detections have been detected on this managed endpoint. Now, as another criteria, once you integrate the Jamf Security Cloud with Jamf Pro, we automatically get, in this case it's still called Wandera device risk level. Within the Jamf Security Cloud, we basically decide and set a certain risk level if the device does meet all the criteria we set within the Jamf Security Cloud, which I will cover in a bit as well. So, as you know, it's quite easy to build those extension attributes. You can give them your custom name. It's just basically adding them into computer or mobile device management and creating them just once manually. Now, if we go into Jamf Protect, which is the endpoint protection solution specifically built for Mac, basically we monitor all those devices and endpoints for known threats or sophisticated attacks, which might be more behavioral based, as an example. What I'm going to show you is basically the fact that we are able to set within Jamf Protect, and I might need to scroll down with the Zoom sharing bar, that we want, as an example, to notify Jamf Pro once this has been detected on one of the protected endpoints. So bear with me while I find quarantine, and this is just an example where we are able to edit that particular behavioral-based detection, and we can give this a custom value here. So we can either signal Jamf Pro with, as an example, just high based on the severity, or medium in this case, or we can give them custom identifier if we would like to do that. So this is the only thing we need to do from a Jamf Protect perspective to basically operate together with Jamf Pro and use that extension attribute. Now, if we look at the Jamf Security Cloud, we are able to sync devices within the Jamf Security Cloud using UEM Connect, which is basically a connector in the Jamf Security Cloud, pulling information from Jamf Pro and also enriching information into managed devices into this portal by using attributes coming from Jamf Pro. If I go to one of the Macs that's indeed here on the ground, you will see basically that this is an UEM solution managed device, which could be Jamf Pro, but it can also be Mobile Iron, Workspace ONE, Microsoft Endpoint Manager, or any of the other vendors we support within the Jamf Security Cloud. So the information we see here is either generated by just enrolling the device into the Jamf Security Cloud, where we don't rely on Pro, or we feed additional information into this portal by using user allocation from Pro as an example. So once those devices have been enrolled, we can set, like within Jamf Protect, threat response rules. And as an example, if I am going to the category malware network traffic, I can basically UEM signalize, in this case Jamf Pro, with custom tags, which are my extension attributes. So once malware traffic has been detected on one of my endpoints, I'm basically going to write the value true to either one of these extension attributes, computer or mobile, for that particular compromised endpoint. So what I'm going to do now is show you that within Microsoft, I have an iPad, and I wanted to show my iPad as well, but screen sharing didn't work, so I tried to stick with the Mac today, is that this particular Mac is being marked as compliant, because our compliance policy is currently very basic within Jamf Pro. So let's go into that compliance policy. I hit edit, so we have a better readability. So currently my compliance policy for either Google or Microsoft is system integrity needs to be enabled, secure boot level needs to be full security. Of course, we want the boot partitions to be encrypted by native file encryption, and the last check-in of the device is not more than 30 days, as an example, old. This is pretty basic criteria to decide is the device compliant, yes or no. Now, as I've been sharing earlier, once we integrated those solutions, we are able to use those additional criteria from either Jamf Protect or the Jamf Security Cloud to basically, enhance our compliance groups. So now I'm going to stick with malware network traffic detected, which I'm going to simulate on one of my devices as well. So let's do this. Is not true. If I hit save, the result should be that my device, which is there on the ground, is still part of this group, so it's currently compliant. Now, if I go to my Mac and, hey, I received another email from that clever guy, Thijs, which shares with me that there's a new My Mac tool available within the organization. Yeah, sure, let's try it. So I'm going to click on that link. This link is going to be blocked by the Jamf Security Cloud using secure DNS, which is DNS over HTTPS. So basically, the threat already has been auto-resolved in this case, but still, you might want to be aware of it within Jamf Pro. So if I now go back into Jamf Pro, and I go navigate to that particular device, you will basically see that extension attribute for malware network traffic detected being immediately, and that also relates back to your question, set to true. So this is like in real time, cloud to cloud. Now, if we go back to that compliance group, you will notice that this particular device is not part of that group anymore. So if we go to this group, sometimes it depends a bit, or maybe I did a typo. And again, if there are any questions in between, please do not hesitate to ask them. Jamf Security Cloud, malware network traffic is not true. Let's hit save again. Oh, maybe I made a typo. So now the device is not in this compliance group anymore. Immediately we will basically signalize the Microsoft stack, that this device is not being marked as compliant anymore. So within a couple of seconds, minutes, it depends on the load either from Pro to Microsoft or the frequency we basically feed that information, we will notice that this particular device is being marked as non-compliant.
So as soon as the device falls out of the group, it does a recon so that the compliance.
Well, it's not a.
Because what I mean, like usually what you do is that the compliance policies are set in right, in Azure, based on Microsoft's rule of set. The compliance is evaluated, not the group in Jamf.
Well, it depends. So the question is basically how do we feed from Pro to the Microsoft stack and on which frequency, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So basically once, it depends indeed on your compliance group. So if it's, as an example, file vault. Maybe now file vault is turned on and I just had a recon coming through on my device. If I now turn off file vault and the recon only happens maybe tomorrow, then of course tomorrow that change will be reflected. So if you're using these security solutions from Jamf, which are again talking cloud to cloud and not relying on that recon, that agent, that binary on the actual endpoint, it's immediately. So I will try to make long sentences right now, and if the cloud is with me today, there we go. And at least this is the Mac which I'm working on, boom, marked as compliant. So that's quick how it can get from a compliant to non-compliant state. Of course, you can build your own list of compliance criteria. And this is just a very basic example. More importantly, maybe for mobile devices would be, hey, I want to make sure vulnerable devices are not allowed to access corporate resources where we do share our revenue numbers as an example. Oh, sorry, yeah, you missed it in the beginning. Sorry, in the beginning I explained with some diagrams how conditional access for macOS used to work within Jamf, where we basically had a list of this criteria to Microsoft where you can build your compliance groups on. And now it's the opposite story, or the world has changed. Now Jamf is the boss, basically, in deciding when is the device compliant, and we basically signal yes or no. Yeah. So another example, let's go back into the Jamf Security Cloud for mobile. I do have my iPad, which is laying down here, just enrolled into Jamf Pro and the Jamf Security Cloud using the Jamf Trust app, which is basically an app allows you to set up a ZTNA solution using the Jamf Security Cloud, or making sure that we do collect some security-related information from that particular device. Now, if I go into security threat view, you'll basically see that there are open threats currently reported into the Jamf Security Cloud. I don't mind currently that my iPad has lock screen disabled because I don't want to remember the passcode for my test devices. But more importantly is medium risk vulnerable OS, vulnerable, detected. So I'm able to check, okay, which device, which user has a vulnerable version of iOS or iPadOS running. I am then able to navigate into basically the event log of that particular device, and you can also see when and basically when did we collect that information. Now, if I go into the details of this event, we will basically also map the version of the OS, and more importantly, relevant for security admins, which vulnerabilities have been reported being active on this specific version of iOS. So if you are really security minded, you can basically click through these vulnerabilities and also view the full CVE being redirected to the CVE database. Super cool, but basically we want to make sure that once this happens, someone is not able to access the resources. So same story, but then for mobile devices, we do have Also, in this case, a compliance group. I'm not sure if it's this one. Yeah, this one, where we can add additional criteria being reported back from the Jamf Security Cloud. It could be either the Wandera device risk level, which can be secured, low, medium, and high based upon the criteria we set within the Jamf Security Cloud. But now let's take the example. If I click Show Advanced Criteria, the Jamf Security Cloud, vulnerable OS detected. Boom. Let's add this one. So we don't want to have vulnerable OS detected is not true. Boom, hit save. Device is not being marked as compliant anymore once that syncs happens from Pro to Microsoft Stack. If I search for that particular device, which of course was already enrolled for demo purposes, you will notice that also within Jamf Pro we can be aware of the fact that this device is not running only an out-of-date version of iPadOS, which is totally fine, but also the fact that it's a vulnerable OS, which can be more relevant for your organization. And that's how we are able to basically point anything Jamf back into Microsoft or Google and Okta. Any questions? Yes, so the question is, can we show the compliance policies from a Microsoft perspective? So yes, we can. So what I will do, I will cover how we did this with conditional access for macOS legacy, and then I will show you how it works basically now. So within a Microsoft stack, you are able to build, go away, Azure AD conditional access policies. Within Azure AD conditional access policy, you are able to basically decide a couple of criteria. As an example, which users are going to be required to, well, satisfy this conditional access policy. It can be either all the users within this particular tenant, it can be particular users or groups, or everybody, and we are going to exclude Thijs as an example. So basically, we decide the scope. Then we can decide again which apps are going to be controlled by this conditional access policy. Again, you can select one app, or multiple, or all. As an example, it could be that you are having Jamf Pro SAML single sign-on enabled for one of your Jamf Pro tenants, and you only want to make sure that people are able to access this Jamf Pro instance with their administrator permissions once the device is healthy, secured, and basically meet all our conditions. So here, we are able to set much more information like, is this policy being applied to iOS, macOS, or all the platforms that are reporting back to the Microsoft Cloud? But more importantly, here you're basically deciding, okay, we do grant access if device to be marked as compliant. So that's basically the hard requirement in order to access Microsoft Teams or Jamf Pro. Usually, with the previous integration, you basically needed to, yes. Well, no, good question. So,
like naming in Jamf the group that it is compliance, I guess it doesn't automatically detect it.
Yeah, that was my question about the compliance.
Yeah, I will show you that. So I will show you right now what we did previously, and still is being used if you use conditional access for macOS. So we need to navigate to endpoint.microsoft.com, where we are able to navigate to devices, in this case macOS, and here we are able to configure compliance policies. So this only is applicable to devices that are using our legacy integration. Here I can select the platform, and this also applies when the device is not being managed by Jamf Pro, but Microsoft Endpoint Manager. I need to give the name. And here we are able to basically configure basic conditions or criteria, like I shared earlier, that shortly is like OS version, is there a passcode, system integrity protection, and that's almost it. That's where you used to be to set a compliance policy if the device would end up in Endpoint Manager, which is now not the case anymore. It's only ending up in Azure AD. So within Azure AD, we basically rely on the newer partner management API from Microsoft. So for years we used, well, a deprecated API, and Jamf has now moved to their more modern partner management API. So if I go connectors and tokens, we used to use the partner device management API, which is going to be sunsetted and deprecated by Microsoft as well. So it's not Jamf deciding to not support it anymore. Microsoft basically announced somewhere middle of this year it's going not to work anymore. But here within partner compliance management, we add a compliance partner. You are able to select Jamf device compliance, and that's basically where you set up, hey, yeah, we do trust Jamf as a vendor, and then within Jamf, we decide our compliance groups, and we basically report back yes or no.
The compliance settings,
Yeah.
you select just which groups will be the ones inside of the compliance.
Exactly. So let me hit edit, because then basically,
And those are all the smart groups, okay?
yeah, that's are all the smart groups available for computers and mobile devices.
Yeah, that's
And similar is for Google by Corp. Basically similar, same story. Exact same techniques. Yeah, that was basically my story around using the whole Jamf Security Cloud, either Jamf Protect or Jamf Pro to enhance your compliance policies. I did see pizzas coming in, so I don't want to make you more hungry, and I know there's another talk. Maybe I went over time, I don't know.
I've got one question more. Because
Cool.
like you said, and like you mentioned, a lot of companies still use that legacy compliance,
Right, yeah.
And what would be like the best way to migrate from one to another? Well, you will have to do it one day, but best practice.
Cool, yeah, so the question is, hey, we are a company and we are using the legacy conditional access integration for macOS, and how can I migrate to the newer device compliance? Currently, there's no safe and 100% true answer from a Jamf perspective. So I think Jamf support and customer success recommends now wait until Microsoft has announced the official migration path. So we are working very closely with Microsoft on this, and we want to make it as seamless as possible for Jamf and Microsoft customers. And we don't want to see unsatisfied end users. So they are actually, we are working on migration paths which are currently not available yet. So for new Jamf Pro tenants or instances, you cannot even enable that old integration anymore. But for existing tenants, at a certain point you need to move over, because yeah, Microsoft is really shutting down that API. So good question, yeah.
So, I'm not sure if there was this question, but what we have, we are using the Trust app,
Yeah.
and we are connected with the VPN. What happened with the traffic? Because I think that who is in the chat, he said that then the traffic is not monitored with Jamf Trust app.
Okay, good question. So once you use Jamf Trust as a ZTNA solution on either one of your managed macOS or mobile endpoints, we can basically also achieve similar workflows. And this is a little bit off topic from the workflow I was showing today. But to answer the question, within the Jamf Security Cloud, you can basically configure access policies, which basically means, wrong area, access policy. Which basically means you can connect endpoints and navigate their traffic either to cloud applications or on-prem applications using the Jamf Security Cloud. What we are going to do, or what we are able to do, is configure which applications do we want to basically route through the Jamf Security Cloud, and what you can do on the back end of Microsoft or whatever resource you connect there, is that you only allow communication or traffic to that application if the device is traffic, or the traffic is coming from one of the trusted IPs, which are your egress IPs from the Jamf Security Cloud. So currently you get a subset of 3 IPs depending on the region where your instance is hosted. But we are working on having more dedicated IP. So there's a unique IP for your Jamf Security Cloud instance in a specific region. So it's only your users using Jamf Trust having that unique egress IP. But if we are going to configure either an on-prem app or a cloud app to be connected using the Jamf Trust ZTNA, what you can do, and let's take Dropbox as an example, and we hit next, and the zoom bar is in front of the UI. Well, we can do a lot of customizations. Let's skip that for now. We can basically decide also that we don't allow traffic to that particular resource if the device is having a particular device risk level, which could be high, medium, or low. And this is also real time. So if a threat is being detected on one of your managed endpoints and Jamf Trust is enabled, and the risk level changes, then of course we will immediately stop that traffic from happening, because we are in charge of flowing that traffic from endpoint through the Jamf Security Cloud and one of our data centers back into, well, your cloud or on-prem app.
Only for the configured applications, right? Like Dropbox.
No, that's just a preset of applications from third-party vendors where we do maintain their public FQDNs for. Of course, you are able to.
Traffic is cut for those applications, not like, let's say you got an outdated OS and then the whole network is cut off and you cannot even update.
Exactly, yeah. It's only for that particular data stream. Again, way off topic, but Jamf Trust is a more modern ZTNA solution where we use as a protocol WireGuard compared to legacy VPN solutions. Is the fact, or the bonus with WireGuard is that for each data stream we are going to, well, trigger from an endpoint, is basically a separate tunnel is being created, a micro WireGuard tunnel. So instead of split tunnel or full VPN tunnels, all traffic is basically being routed through a single tunnel. Now, once an end user goes to Zoom, WebEx, whatever, for each request, there's a micro tunnel being set up. But yeah, you can use a preset of applications because we maintain those FQDNs. You're able to configure your own. And of course, you can also create your own connection between the Jamf Security Cloud and your on-premise firewalls using IPsec. So then you can also only allow users to access corporate resources using the Jamf Security Cloud, using your firewall on-prem, if they do satisfy all the criteria and using the Jamf Trust app, etc., etc.
For tunnel connections, this wouldn't work, right?
Sorry?
For tunnel VPN connections, this wouldn't work because you cannot see the traffic that's going as tunnel to Jamf Security Cloud, or can you?
No, you can. So you're able to design your own access policies by using either static IPs or FQDNs or even connecting your on-prem DNS servers. And then once a client goes to fileserver.mac2.dev and you have that policy created, as an example, if I go to access policies, this is my home lab. So let's take my domain controller as an example for getting Kerberos tickets. You are able to configure the host names, application host names. So once that device basically tries to resolve this address, it's being detected like, oh yeah, for this we need to use the Jamf Trust app, spin up a WireGuard tunnel, and then we are able to connect once all criteria is met. Good questions. How about time? I don't know.
I think good for if anyone has questions.
Knowledge first, food second.
Okay, or we can do both. I'm here, so if there are any questions.
Think about the question.
Yeah. Well, again, thanks for having me. Hopefully it was a little bit inspirational. And again, you can use these workflows also with other MDMs, but it's basically, let's try to make those, well, compliance groups and conditional access workflows a bit more enhanced by using, well, not just static information from Pro, but also security cloud.